All right, we will call this board directors meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. This board has a land acknowledgement anti-racism statement that we have written that's on the board's website. Roll call tonight. Keith McLean is excused absence, and Kanu I have not heard from, but I think she was planning on being here. So yeah, moving to adoption of the agenda. I do want to amend the agenda to include announcements as item number 2 and move the rest of it down. I have a couple announcements to make. So I'll amend the agenda to add announcements as item number 2.
Tommy has a hand up.
AJ, can we also amend the agenda to add some property owner comments at the end? This is kind of a big issue, and I think that we should have comments at the beginning and the end.
Is anybody opposed to that?
There's an ACC meeting scheduled that got pushed back because of us. They may be opposed to it.
Well, they might be, but this is a big deal. This is not just a normal thing we're looking at. So I think this should be given, the time that it needs.
I'm not opposed to it. I thought that it would be difficult to have this meeting within an hour.
All right, Nancy.
You can have another meeting if it's still buzzing around and there's no consensus. I offered Monday, starting at 7. We'll be out of the hit. We start at NNE at 6:30. All we have to do is one thing, and that is by design, to get out of your way. Having been in your way before,
I don't want to have another meeting personally. We already have a meeting next Thursday, so
okay.
I'm fine with it. But yeah, ACC might be late or we have to be rescheduled. All right, well, a motion to amend the agenda to add announcements as item 2 and add a second round of property owner comments at the end.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? All right. Motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? All right. So I have a couple quick announcements. Just wanted to give a quick announcement on a few project updates of things that are happening. So there's several roads and drainage projects that are in the works. The board approved funding for pothole repairs and some minor asphalt and drainage repairs that were associated with some previous work that was not done and some stuff that came to light as a result of the November storm events last year. And we have a major road reconstruction project for Spring Hill Road, Cascade Lane, and Green Hill Road. All of those things are finishing up design and permitting and should be ready to be put out to bid here soon. I know the pothole repairs was put out to bid, and that's moving forward. The major projects are being wrapped up in permitting and design right now and should be moving forward. Barn 7 foundation removal is being moved forward. In 2019, the board approved funding for the demolition of the foundation of the rotunda and the Barn 7 foundation, and the Barn 7 foundation was never removed. Those funds are still allocated, have been hanging out in our capital reporting for several years now, and the permitting was allowed to lapse as staff didn't move that project forward at the time. So that is being re-permitted, and the expectation is that that foundation, the fencing, and the eyesore that is will be removed this summer once the earthwork moratorium is no longer in effect. The whole 8 golf course bridge, the board's approved construction funding for. It is current, has been bid and it has been awarded, but it is the HPA permit is still being finalized by Fish and Wildlife, and that is causing a little bit of delays on getting that construction underway. The kitchen repairs in the clubhouse are underway. There was significant damage due to not correct repairs done over several years previously, and the damage was worse than what the water remediation people could see from the surface. Once they started digging into it, that stuff started to spiral a bit, and a lot of the kitchen will need to be dealt with, and even the ceilings and stuff going all the way back into accounting have been ripped out and things like that. So we're currently working to get contractors in, but it has been difficult to find commercial contractors who have availability to start immediately on those projects. But we're hoping to get that going here in the next several weeks, and are getting some bids in place. And then the marina dock is in permitting again and being dealt with, and the replacement of that dock will largely circle around negotiating with the previous contractor that was selected and the litigation that is surrounding that, and then waiting for the permitting. The permitting, it requires a full shoreline permit, not the exemption that was gotten fraudulently before. And so that takes a significant amount of time compared to an exempt permit. And then I wanted to make one other announcement. So it's come to my attention that there's been discussions within the community surrounding pictures taken of some of us board members at the Lake Whatcom Boulevard property that's being discussed tonight for potential purchase. I see we got a pretty healthy crowd in attendance tonight. It is being stated that the board held a secret meeting that was not noticed to the membership. It has been stated that there was a quorum of the board present. Neither of these assertions are true. I was present at the property and photographed in some of the pictures. There was never was a quorum present together, as the tour of the property was staggered such that a quorum was not present, so that a meeting was not being held. I saw the photos that were posted. None of them show a quorum present. Pictures taken of the board members and actions taken by the board members show one thing, while words being stated by people unhappy with our decisions say another thing. This is simply just misinformation. It's actually quite unethical, has the potential to cause harm both to the community and the business that has served Sutton Valley residents for decades from that location. This misinformation seems to just be repeated over and over again, and just because you repeat something does not make it the truth. I will say that the board did discuss this potential purchase in closed session in prior meetings. We discussed the purchase with our attorney, and due to the seller wanting privacy of the transaction, until the board was prepared to make an actual decision on the property, the attorney felt we were within our rights to begin this discussion in closed session to determine what additional information would be needed by the board to have an open session discussion and make an actual formal decision on purchasing the property or not. I think the actions of a few loud and vocal people, residents, show exactly how the association could be disadvantaged if these matters were discussed openly from the onset. I've been made aware that one of the vocal people actually tried to put an offer in on the property at one point in time. I'm also aware that the seller did not want to be enveloped in a political battle that they wanted no part of, which is obvious to me from the reaction of these select few that this has already happened as well. So I will say that the board determined in closed session that more information was necessary to make an informed decision on the property. The board did want to be able to tour the property and see the building for themselves. They wanted to see an inspection be completed prior to agreeing to any purchase and sale contract. And they wanted a financial analysis from Joel to see how this affected our capital planning. We were informed by Joel that it would not impact the dues rate that's being charged. Joel will be doing a presentation tonight showing how this affects the 10-year SERP plan. An inspection was completed using operational funds that showed only minor issues that the seller has agreed to fix prior to transfer the ownership. And we did do a tour of the building as I discussed previously. So just wanted to try to put some of those things to bed because I think there's a lot of misinformation swirling around in the community and it does a disservice to everybody. Does anyone else have any announcements? Brian?
Yeah, I want to reference the Sutton Valley recall that's going on. I just wanted to say that I wanted to give my unequivocal support to the board members. And I just want to tell the community that, that a lot of you have no idea how much these four have done for the community and how much they continue to do for our community. They're some of the most effective people I've ever been around, I've ever known. And I've known a lot of really effective people. I know a lot of perfectionists. I know a lot of overachievers since I work in the academic field. And these folks are some of the most fabulous people that I've ever been around. So just wanted to clarify that. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I will also say we're working on a written project status update on some of the things that I discussed first announcement. Be getting it on the website, trying to put together an e-blast and putting it in the views as well, just to keep people informed. Most of this stuff has been stated at previous board meetings and in the views prior and things like that. So. All right. Well, we will move on to property owner comments. I'd just like to try to get people to limit their comments to 2 or 3 minutes. We'll give everyone a chance to speak. There's obviously a lot of people here. And so, yeah, I think, please try not to repeat yourself. Please try to be concise and clear with what you want to state. And
keep your comments to 3 minutes, I would say, right? We 3-minute time limit.
And please refrain from personal attacks and just discuss the idea.
All right. Well, we've got hands going up. We have 54 attendees. Heather was first up here, so I'll go ahead and bring you on over. Heather, if you could give your name and address and go ahead and unmute when you're ready for your statement.
Okay, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, my name's Heather Goodman. My address is 19 Clear Lake Court. I have a couple of comments on various things, so I will get them out and then quickly move so you guys can move on. My first one is with regards to, and it may come up when Joel does his presentation, if we do move forward with this property, the Sunmark property, are we seeking a mortgage for the property either in whole or part? And then I'm curious in the financial disclosures to the lender, how the transfer fee has been presented. And in addition to that, are any assets outside of the Sunmark property up for collateral? Those would be my questions with regards to the Sunmark property. I am also curious, Andrew, thank you for an update on a lot of those projects that are in the works. You were somewhat detailed on many, but I heard a lot of generality words. So I'm very much looking forward to project updates that would come forth from a project planner perspective from that aspect, because these are costly. projects. So I would like to understand the timeline when we should start seeing those project details that anyone would expect to see coming out in budgetary items. And then my last comment is I would really like to see this board spend a little less time defending yourselves just because people are quiet or commenting on activities doesn't mean that they are against you. The flurry of conversation that I have seen all day with regard to the Sunmark property has actually been very productive. I've seen very little rudeness come across, slightly stunned. And my last thing is, regardless of how you approached touring the building, it was still done in secrecy and is actually against the bylaws for you to go into closed session without an announcement of what that conversation will include. It is your responsibility to this HOA to follow our bylaws, not the desires of a property owner who is looking to sell their property. So that is all I have to say, and I will mute myself back up. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
If I can figure out how. There we
Oh,
go.
there we go. Actually, I'll go ahead and move you back to the attendees and see if we have any board response.
There was no meeting that was held, so there was no closed session that happened at the property. It was not a meeting of the board. There was random people moving in and out of the property. All we did was look at the property with our own eyes, and then we left.
All right, we'll move on here to Megan. Megan, I've brought you over to the meeting here. Go ahead and unmute and give your name and address, please.
Thank you, Megan Thagason, Plum Lane and Gate 3. Can you hear me?
Here you go.
Okay, thanks. Just want to say, first of all, I really appreciate everything and all the time that you guys are putting in. And I sometimes am characterized as a negative Nelly online. And so I apologize if that ever comes across that way. But I will say that it is concerning the closed session aspect of how this rolled out. And from my perspective, I'm looking at this bylaw that says, the board shall restrict the consideration of matters during the closed portions of meeting only to those purposes specifically exempted and stated in the motion. No motion or other action adopted, passed, or agreed to in closed session may become effective unless the board, following the closed session, reconvenes in open meeting and votes in the open meeting on such motion or other action which is reasonably identified. So to me, if you had a desire to protect the property owner from public speculation, the proper thing would have been to come out of closed session and make a motion to investigate purchasing a commercial property or something where it wasn't identified, or to make a motion that the board will seek further information regarding the potential monetary impact or what have you of purchasing a property for Sutton Valley. But there has been no motion of any such nature to the community in open session, but there's been obvious actions from the board regarding this purchase. And I don't know who would be someone to consult about that. Is that the parliamentarian with understanding sort of how these meetings are to run? Is that legal? It really reads to me that our bylaws weren't considered with respect to open session versus closed session. And I don't think that anyone was doing that out of malintent, but I think it creates a lot of confusion in the community. And I think that people get all up in arms when they feel that things are being done in secret. And so that just to me creates more problems. And so I would just ask that maybe going forward, if there's a way you can get clarification from somebody who might know how to follow that bylaw kind of as it's intended, like what do you need to do that has to be done in open session to take action? Like I realize no property has been bought, but you've definitely taken action on that possibility. And that to me was inappropriate without an open session motion. So that's what I wanted to say today. Thank you.
Well, we did talk to our legal counsel about it, just so you're aware, and we didn't actually take any action as a board to spend any money or do anything.
Thank you so much, Megan. I'll go ahead and return you to the attendees here.
Yeah, John, can I ask Nancy to speak to this parliamentarian aspect? Because it just seems like this is being repeated, that
Yeah,
we did
absolutely.
something wrong or illegal or something.
It's not. There was no meeting. All that quorum decisions is to not have a meeting. And unless you have a quorum present, you don't have a meeting. And by the way, I'm non-voting. I don't count towards a quorum, and neither does Keith, because he's a non-voting member. I don't know that that matters at all. I haven't seen pictures, but I will tell you, if I saw somebody in the bushes pointing something at me, I'm calling the SWAT team, because I don't know what he's shooting, a camera or a gun. And I'm not going to hang around and find out by myself. Thank you.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Brian?
Oh, thanks, Nancy. I appreciate it.
All right, I'll go ahead and bring
Nancy.
Karen over at this point. Karen, I brought you into the meeting. If you could give your name and address, please.
Karen Hardesty? Or just Karen? Me?
Yep, you.
It's you.
Okay, good to know. There's several Karens here.
There are a couple, yeah.
Yeah, so yay! Thank you so much, AJ, for that update.
Hey, Karen, could you please state your division?
Oh, sorry. Karen Hardesty, 25 Oakcrest Circle, Bellingham, Washington, 98229. Thank you, AJ, for that update. Oh, golly. And you don't have to defend yourself against false things, but I appreciate it when you explain things. I think most people do. That's a role I try to take in the community when I understand something, is to just try to explain it. End of story. So thank you, AJ. And I support this acquisition, even though I don't know the details. You know why? Because I trust you guys, and I expect you to explain it to us and to keep open to what might happen in the future. I did submit a letter in that regard. So if there's anything that I would ever want from this board that hasn't happened, it would just be, yes, more of that great updating information. So thank you all. Bye.
Thank you so much,
Karen.
All right, and that is all of our raised hands for, oh, we've got Evan. Evan, I'm gonna go ahead and bring you over to the meeting here. If you could give your name and address, please.
Yes, my name's Evan. I'm at 5 Shooting Star. As a new resident, this is my first meeting. Hi, everyone. I was just wondering, what is the intended use of this property? I think that's like a mystery a lot of folks seem to be wanting an answer to, and I will admit I just don't know much about. So I'd love to hear more about like why even purchase it in the first place, especially I guess considering since a lot of things need maintenance as it is.
Yep, we'll be discussing that with the agenda item for sure. So I think everyone will have, opinions to state. And so, yeah, I think we're not going to discuss it right at this moment. Under this, we got to get to the actual agenda item first.
Oh, good. I didn't realize. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
No
Evan.
worries.
Welcome
Thank
to
you.
the neighborhood.
Thanks, Evan. I'll go ahead and return you to the attendees here. And we've got Kevin up. Kevin, I'm going to go ahead and bring you over. And if you could give your name and address, please.
Kevin, Division 20, Lot 1. I want to ask the board with your forthcoming announcement if you could concurrently explain how you're going to protect the lake and respect the neighborhood. So Lake Louise is one of the last bastions of peace and tranquility around here. People enjoy its serenity. It's got a nice hiking trail. There's a thriving bird sanctuary on the lake. So I'd like to hear when you announce this, how you plan to keep this from turning into a circus like so many other areas of Sutton Valley. How are you going to keep the noise down, minimize the operating hours? How are you going to hide the blight that's the building itself? How are you going to ensure there's no impact on the bird sanctuary? How are you going to accommodate increased traffic and inevitable traffic conflicts at the entrance of Gate 2? And how are you going to accommodate parking on and on? And I want to be clear, I don't want to just hear ideas and promises, because those are only good until you leave office. I'd like to know how this could be codified in our bylaws so it's protected in perpetuity. And you know darn well that some unprincipled board will someday try to change the usage. The stupid idea spigot has already been turned on. People are talking about, making a restaurant or a bar or drive-through coffee or movie theater, daycare. I'm surprised nobody suggested a hunting lodge, given its proximity to the bird sanctuary. So how will you ensure the property is never used for something other than its intended use after the board is gone? How will the lake and neighborhood be shielded from facility-related activities after this board is gone? And if you can make that case, or the building is to be torn down, then I support the acquisition. But if the purchase comes without these assurances, then I'll oppose it actively and passionately. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. I'll go ahead and return you to the attendees and wait for any board response here.
At the moment.
All right, I believe that's all our raised hands at this time.
All right, we'll move on to the business of the agenda. I'm going to pass it over to Joel here initially. He's going to do a quick presentation on the financial component of how this affects the 10-year SURF plan.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share, and then I'm going to show the 10-year SURF plan that AJ talked about. Can everyone see this? I take it. I assume you can. So what I've got here, so this is, I'll just, just quickly, just in a fast nutshell, run through the 10-year SURF plan. So people have seen capital planning spreadsheet like this before. We had one in the last budget before that, and so on and so forth. But so basically, this is the SURF plan, and each line item would be all the items that we have in our reserve study, replacement years. Obviously, we start off with the revenues coming in, dues, and so forth. And actually, on this SURF plan, there's also an escalation clause built into it, but I actually bumped this up to 5% just to be more conservative based off of inflationary rates. So that's the escalation clause, 5%. So that just means that if you have an item that's going to be replaced, like years down the road, it's going to start tacking on 5% every single year onto that. In the past years, we used 2.5%. That's what the reserve companies were using. Of course, talking to our reserve company right now, gosh, I think he said probably possibly around 4.5% or so, maybe 5%, but I just use 5% just to be on the safe side. But basically, so quickly, so you start off with the revenues, then you have your line items, the expenses, the stuff on the reserve study, what years that these are planning to be replaced or repaired. And then when you get to the bottom, this is what's really showing you kind of the brass tacks, the bottom line here. So you have the expenses here, which actually correspond with these expenses right here. It's just being repeated. And basically, now we're starting to subtract away from the revenues up above. That's what this bottom line is doing. And then here is this line item right here, the Lake Whatcom Boulevard property financing. So in terms of like how this is going, would be done if the board decides to go ahead and do this is, so basically the purchase price is about 1.5 million, 1.53 million rounding. We would be, what the board would do if they choose to do it is to, now back in, you probably remember back in 2019, actually for the year ending 2019, we had over $100,000 surplus, operating surplus. And then in early 2020, the board voted, directed to take that surplus, then apply it to the principal balance of the SURF loan. So in this situation, we would be doing something very similar to this. At the end of 2021, we had over a $500,000 surplus from the operating income on the financial statement. So we would be applying 500,000 of that to this property purchase, which would mean that we would be financing about 1 million. I'm just going to rounding 1,036,000. So approximately about $1 million is what would be financed through the bank for the property purchase. And this line item right here, it says Lake Whatcom Boulevard financing loan payments. This is what you're looking at in terms of the annual effect of how much these payments would cost each year. In 2022, just assuming we made a full-blown payment in June, that's why the 2022's number is lower, because obviously we have fewer payments. But this would be, by the way, be a 10-year loan through the bank. And so each year you'd be looking at about $130,332 in annual payments on this loan. Now, this type of loan, so someone did ask a question very early on in the property comment section about, what type of loan it is. Is it on the land itself or whatever? This loan is actually, so it'll be through CIT Bank, the exact same bank that our SURF loan is through, and it's structured to be exactly the same thing as that SURF loan. So really, the collateral is the exact same collateral on the SURF loan, which would be the income to the association. So not the property itself or that land itself, but the income of the association, just like the other SURF loan is. So it's structured literally exactly what it is. It's going to be exactly the same type of loan. And another question someone asked, were the property transfer fee revenues, was the bank considering that? No, they were not. We did not provide that to the bank for any, in terms of like revenue for collateral. So that is out of it completely. But that's basically how that loan would be structured. So the bottom line really is in terms of like, the burning question would be, would dues have to go up for something like this? Well, maybe I should make this a little bigger. So the thing is, with this property purchase, the financing of it is you're looking at annual payments of $130,332, and that's 10 years worth of payments. So when you look at the expected residual before the recommended carryover, this blue line, that's where you're seeing what the SURF ending balance would be. But then, like every single month when I do the financial statements, I always talk about that target reserve carryover amount, which then subtracts away. Basically, this target reserve carryover amount is it's basically, this is the amount that we would like to not go below, in a sense. So it's almost acting like it's committed, so to speak. So that's why this green line basically takes the blue line, like in 2022, this 1.5 million subtracts away $600,000 target reserve carryover, and that's how much usable money that we have, 915,433, and then it just repeats from year to year beyond across this 10 years. So in terms of how much it would affect the SURF loan balance at $130,332 per year, I mean, it's kind of at that point to where it's like, is it really a make or break type thing for the association in terms of raising dues? No, it's not. In terms of, like, for example, we had an unplanned, that golf bridge replacement that they talked about. Well, the board approved $323,000 for that golf bridge. So it's not like at this point we're worried about, geez, now we have to jack up dues because of that. So typically what happens is when we start to make purchases, if something comes up, something can be moved from one year to the next. Like we could just decide, well, these 3 trucks that were actually on the reserve study to purchase, well, maybe we don't need to purchase those trucks that year. Maybe we can push those off for multiple years. Who knows? Meaning the reserve study is more of a guide. So, but I guess what I'm saying, at $130,000 annual payments for something like this, so you're financing about $1 million, you'll pay $130,000 annually for this property purchase. It really comes down to, if this is a really desirable piece of property that you really want, and this is something that the association would have conceivably forever, unless they sold it in the future, would a payment of $130,000 for 10 years stop you for something like that? No, it wouldn't. And would it raise dues? No, it wouldn't. Meaning things could be reshuffled here and there. Things can be folded into in terms of budgeting and payments year by year to compensate for this. So in terms of, it's kind of on the line in terms of, is that guaranteed that it'll raise the dues? No, absolutely not. It equates to about, this payment right here of $130,332 is approximately, and this is even at a 93% collection rate, it's about $3.74 per resident per month, in a sense. So, it's not like a real burning amount in terms of your overall SURF expenditures. Now, one thing, of course, I even kind of hesitate to even say this, but I guess I'll just go ahead and do it. But the target reserve carryover amount that I talked about, that 600,000 amount. So roads has a target reserve carryover amount of only 500,000. SURF has 600,000 actually. But then when I look at the reserve, how much that we have in assets on the reserve studies and stuff, we actually have more in assets on the roads than we do in the SURF on the reserve study reports. And our cash balances between SURF and roads are actually very similar. So you have, but if anything, if just even looking at the reserve studies, you'd almost think you'd have the target reserve carryover of 500,000 on SURF and then 600,000 on roads, in a sense, just based off of that. But meaning, if you thought about it from that, if you said this is 500,000, that's already basically making up $100,000 of that financing. Meaning, if you were just going to set that amount aside, that's locked up anyways. But I guess the bottom line, at $130,000 annually, would that put you in a situation to where it is absolutely going to raise dues? No, it won't.
Just to confirm, Joel, so the loan collateral is the dues revenue in the pot of money for SURF, is what you were saying earlier, because you just kind of said income.
Yeah, the bank, in terms of when they look at, so when we report revenues to the bank for this loan or for any type of loan, they look at all the revenues coming into the organization. So they look at dues revenues. Actually, dues is what they really look at the most, but they also look at any other revenue coming in. Basically, it's our total cash flows coming into the organization.
Okay. Does anyone have any additional questions for Joel? All right, well, I think we'll kind of move it over to discussion of the topic. I'll just kind of give some of my perspectives, maybe. I think the property, I'm in favor of purchasing the property. I think it would be a great asset to the community to have. I think it could provide kind of a new community hub that's focused around nature and Lake Louise and the Lake Louise Trail, and there could be things, like nature classes and nature walks and educational classes. And there's lots of outdoor space. It's 4 acres, picnic tables and kind of lakeside, relaxing area and things like that. I think it provides additional access for, you know, a lot of like kind of recreation opportunities. And I'm sure there's, you know, other things that people, you know, could think of, you know, and I think it would provide significantly better access to the Lake Louise trailhead. Currently, most of the people have to park across the street and walk through a culvert under Lake Whatcom Boulevard, because there's only about 3 parking spots or 4 parking spots adjacent to this lot. And, you know, the fence would be able to come down. It would open up the whole area. You know, like I said, there's 4 acres. It is zoned commercial. You know, there could be, you know, some revenue opportunities if, you know, some of the space was maybe leased for like a coffee stand or a cafe stand. You know, and, you know, I think it'd be important to kind of, you know, if the property was purchased, to start, you know, discussing some of those possibilities with the community, you know, and some of that stuff. You know, I think, you know, I think that would ensure that Lake Louise is completely within the boundaries of Sutton Valley. As of right now, the association has 0 control over that property being developed. It is not in the HOA. It is just a part of the greater Whatcom County jurisdiction. And if we own this parcel, you know, we could limit, you know, future development, you know, that the community would find unappealing. But as it currently sits, anyone could buy it. And as long as they can get the permits that they need to move it forward with the county, they would be able to do it. And we have no say in that. You know, I think this area, you know, on top of being kind of a community hub, it can provide a more functional and appealing workspaces for some of our Sutton Valley staff, you know, that can better focus around, you know, all things member services. You know, I certainly would have an expectation that an increased level of service in the customer service provided by staff would be part of a move like that. If that's what we do, I think, you know, there's abilities, you know, things like you could rent paddle boats, you know, or something like that for the use on the lake, or a kayak or a canoe, have things like that. So people have those opportunities to enjoy that nature space while still, you know, kind of protecting the space as nature and being able to enjoy the outdoors. You know, if some of the staff is moved over into that space, you know, I think it would provide additional opportunities in the clubhouse where staff are currently at, which, you know, most of our staff have no windows in their office. Some of them don't even have offices. They're sandwiched in wherever nook and cranny they can fit. The entire accounting department basically lives in a dungeon in the basement. You can see Joel's office in his picture. There's definitely no windows. And, you know, I think, you know, some of that would be, it would be a beneficial move to be able to provide that kind of welcome hub right at the front of the community, at one of the main entrances to the community there. You know, and people don't have to drive in to a community. There's, you know, there's a fair amount of parking and stuff in that area, especially if the fence gets taken down. You know, I'll also say removing the proximity of an alcohol establishment in the same building as our staff, because that has been an issue that this board has had to deal with over the last 2 years, would be beneficial to the membership. You know, there's been some things that we've had to deal with employees that are no longer with Sutton Valley as a result of that type of stuff. You know, real estate is not typically a bad investment. You know, a property inspection was done and all of the issues were minor, and the sellers agreed to remedy all of the issues, other than a wood burning fireplace, which would not likely get used And we could sub out for some electric insert or something like that. I think, things that could open up with the space that like some of the space that would be vacated in the clubhouse is, we have a desperate need for indoor climate controlled storage of our official association records. For decade or more now, they've been stored in a Connex box outside in some non-climate controlled building. And it is not good for them. I think some of the space could potentially provide for some of the parcel locker and package pickup issues that we see during the holidays, especially, but, busy parcel delivery times in general. I think it could also potentially add additional meeting space, in the clubhouse for committee meetings or maybe board meetings or community member office and meeting space, things like that. I do think, the purchase of the property is a start, and I think there need to be, some good discussions with the community on uses and things like that. But I see a lot of benefits to purchasing the property, and yeah, I'll kind of leave it at that for what I'm gonna say initially. And I saw Sonia and then Timmy.
Okay. You can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So I'm just going to reiterate pretty much what AJ said, but as Joel's presentation highlights, the purchase of the 1850 Lake Whatcom Boulevard parcel will not impact dues or our capital budgeting. There's been speculation that this purchase would interfere with the planned refurbishment of the dance barn and the recreation corridor. It will not. There's also speculation that this will somehow stop the needed repairs in the clubhouse kitchen. It will not. There is also additional speculation that and concern that the purchase will impact the maintenance of our roads and drainage and the removal of hazard trees. It will not. Additionally, there was an inspection performed on the building, as AJ mentioned, and contrary to the false narrative being spun on social media, the results were actually very, very positive. There were a few minor issues, as AJ stated, that the sellers agreed to repair at their expense. There was no evidence of any water damage or mold throughout the building or underneath the building. No significant issues whatsoever were found. However, this purchase is not just about the building, but the 3.9 acres on which it sits. The purchase is a smart long-term investment in the Sutton Valley community. The property is completely surrounded by SVCA-owned property. However, the association has zero control over how this property can be developed. Even the ACC restrictive covenants do not apply to it. It is Whatcom County land. So we could end up with a building or condos or a weed shop painted orange and purple at one of the main entrances of our community. The purchase gives SVCA and its membership complete control of Lake Louise and the 3.9 acres zoned small town commercial. Last year, after broadly surveying the Sutton Valley members, the strategic planning team led by AJ Tischlader, made up of the 2021 board, Long Range Planning Committee, and the SVCA management team, developed new mission and vision statements to more accurately reflect the community we are today and the community that we hope to become. We listened to the voices of our neighbors and created a vision statement to guide our decisions. Our vision of Sutton Valley is a sustainable and collaborative community where natural beauty, recreation, civic engagement create a strong sense of belonging for our diverse membership. We recognize that a strategic planning process that establishes a clear vision for the future and a set of priorities and measurable goals to guide decisions on budgeting and resource allocation was essential to Sutton Valley's long-term organizational sustainability. The strategic planning team drafted a set of strategic priorities, values that serve as the guiding principles for decisions and actions taken by both the board and staff. Our strategic priorities of sustainability, recreation, natural beauty, inclusiveness, and quality of life for our members and our employees are all addressed with the acquisition of the 3.9 parcel located at 1850 Lake Whatcom Boulevard. Although the immediate use of inside space is being considered as the new location for the administrative offices, the goal is to provide a more welcoming environment to members, more like a welcome center where members can sit outside, meet up for a walk, and enjoy the view of the lake. We envision the property as the members' space, with the offices themselves being a welcoming, inviting space for both members and SVCA staff. But member input will help determine the various uses for the outside area. One thing I can say for certain, the association will not be building condos or a shiny new community center on the shoreline of Lake Louise. The purchase is about preservation. We'll be looking at ways to provide space to educate the community about the beauty and resources of the natural environment of this area, our Sutton Valley community. Thank you.
Tiny, then Sandy, then Kim. You're muted, Tiny. Tiny, you're muted.
Thank you. There are just so many things that I'm just really disturbed by this whole thing. You know, first off, we say that it's not going to affect any repairs and buildings or roads. But, you know, one of the things that Joel did say is, you know, he used the example of trucks. We can just push those things off. Well, when we work on our numbers, we can just push different projects further into the future. And that's the problem. We have old buildings. We have so much work that needs to be done with what we have. So pushing things back is not a good option. Just even looking at, okay, record storage, there's companies that will store your records for you in a clean, dry place. All you have to do is it's a quick phone call and they will send you whatever records you need. It's a really great process. We've used that. You're talking about renting kayaks and paddle boards. Well, that's a teeny tiny little lake. Are we real? If we say we're going to have it nature and lovely and wonderful, so we're going to put a bunch of kayaks and paddle boards on that lake. Those people are not going to find that very restful, and it's certainly not going to help the bird sanctuary. Other things, I came across the Sutton Valley Community Purchasing Policy, and it says for all capital and operations purchases over $2,500, a minimum of 3 bids need to be given. Okay, we can't get bids, but we should have 3 commercial appraisals on this property. We are buying from the owner who is telling us that her property is worth 1.5. Well, she's been trying to sell it for 6 years. And I know that lots here in Sutton Valley are being snapped up by developers. If that property was worth what she's asking, 100%, somebody would have gone in and made her an offer and wanted to develop that. Have we done a feasibility study on this? We're talking about all these things we want to do, but let's remember that we're calling this a commercial property. It is not a commercial property. The front end where the Sunmark building is commercial. The rest of that property is, as you know, it is residential and it is wetlands. And if you try to put something in there with all the restrictions that we have with the waterfront and with the wetlands and everything else, I don't know, has anybody looked into the feasibility of this? And when we're talking about, you know, not being fully funded and we have a percentage on the care fund, you know, we can't compare ourselves to other HOAs because a lot of HOAs are condo units with maybe a pool. We are an older community with lots of places that need work. And we're also looking at in the history, the 40 to 50 year history of this community, we have not purchased any property. And suddenly it's decided that we need offices. When we have good offices, I know that they need work, but there's lots of things you can do to make those offices nice. There's, you know, there's just a ton you can do. There was, and the other thing, which I think is really important for the board members to consider, is as board members, we have a responsibility. And if we vote to go ahead with this purchase, we're giving all this money back, the transfer fund back to the community because we're worried about being sued. What if the community decides this was a really bad idea and I see how it's impacted our community badly? Do you realize that you can be held personally liable for that? They can come, and if you vote for this and a lawsuit comes up, any board member that voted for it can be involved in that lawsuit.
Enough with the threats, Timey. That's unnecessary.
What threat?
It's also not accurate. It's simply not
important to know
true.
that.
It's simply not true. It's
No,
an
you're sitting
untrue
here trying to
statement.
scare people, and they haven't even had a discussion yet. So,
Well,
I
they
mean,
can-
come
okay.
on.
And it's an untrue statement, by the
It is
way.
not an untruth.
It is a
because
100.
if you look at the law, even by not doing anything.
Richard talked
we don't
about
lie.
that in orientation specifically. So
Even if you don't worry about that, the rest of it is valid. Okay, I'll take that off the table if that makes you feel better.
Sandy? Oh, your mic doesn't seem, I can't hear you.
She says
All right.
she's gonna log back out and log back in.
We'll go to Kim, and then once you get back in, you can go next. Okay, Sandy.
All right, Kim Harris, treasurer. I am grateful for the information provided tonight by Joel and an overview of the capital plan. But I do want to stand and say I do not support the decision to purchase the 1850 Lake Whatcom Boulevard building. I am concerned about the rush of the process. I am concerned about, when I ran for the board, I ran because previous boards, I believed, were being lavish with our money and wanting to revitalize the community and build all these things, and there was no input. I also participated on long range planning, and what I perceived from reading the information is that our community wanted to repair what we had. They were not interested in growth or acquisition. They wanted to repair what we have. When we did long range planning, we did go over our mission and vision. We also stated our values. We stated our values as CARES. CARES stands for collaborative, compassionate, and consistent. A is for accountable, adaptable, aligned. R is for responsible, respectful, and resourceful. E is for ethical, equitable, and evidence-based. And S is for sustainable, service-minded, and safe. And I do not feel like the acquisition of this property fits into alignment with all of those values. This process has lacked collaboration of our community. It may be a good idea, but it's a lopsided approach. We have not asked our community for input on this. And this decision, in my opinion, though the board can make this decision, it's too much of a decision for 8 people to make. I don't believe that we've gotten our community input. When I looked at my emails about this information, I received 11 emails against and 1 in support. Now, though that's not a scientific experiment, it heavily leans towards people not being supportive. And what I would like to suggest, if I were to be involved in saying yes to something like this, is to take a pause and include community input. With community input, we can make an evidence-based decision, a collaborative decision. We can exercise the values that we espouse and make a comprehensive decision, including community input. I am a professional surveyor. I would offer my expertise to create a survey to allow for a 2-week period for people to weigh in, and let our community raise their voice to let us know whether or not they support this decision. Another concern that I have is that this building is going to be primarily for staff use. I hear a lot of things thrown around about all the different types of uses, but primarily I hear it is for staff. As a community member, I'm not interested in spending $1.5 million for a new building for our staff. I might entertain spending some of my dues money to get a building that could be for community use, but I am certainly not willing to raise my dues or pay $3.74 a month for something that primarily would house staff. I believe that our existing administration building should be repaired for staff. And if I were to support this, it would be mostly for community use, primarily. Sitting out on the deck and freezing my butt off for 10 months a year is not an interest of me and my ability to use that building. I would want to be inside the building. So in summary, this proposal does not take into consideration the history of this community and what we've been through with the last boards. It is a hasty, rash rush to making a decision. And it's too big for 9 people to make that call, in my opinion. Let's take 30 days. Let's involve the community in this, and let's reassess and make a decision after giving the community the information from the inspection and put out Joel's numbers that he presented and give people the information to weigh in on this so that we can come back together and make a whole comprehensive decision with community involvement. Thank you.
Sandy, you want to give your microphone a go?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Ah, yay. Well, I just want to start by saying that I have 3 generations of my family in Sutton Valley. We've moved here, and then last year as a conscious decision to move to this community based on the opportunities today and far into the future. So I'm not looking just for today and next week, but what's going to be available as my grandsons grow up. I want to say I've been impressed so far with the drive the current board has had to address trees, parks, roads, and solid staffing decisions that are moving us into the future. So I've built trust in the decision-making process. I have no attachment to any of the historical buildings or decisions. So I think I bring a lot more clarity with history and politics and everything. I can see it a little different than other folks. I agree that we've moved forward and done some of the research. And I think you have to watch the numbers and see where they're taking you. And I don't think there's a defined timeline that is set in stone that this has to be moved forward. And I see it as a phase. There's an immediate, how it might be used. There's a short term, and then there's a long term. That's a lot of property. And I, for one, nobody in my family golfs. We don't use the marina. And so there's a large population of people who like to walk the trails. I wish I could park there and not go through the scary culvert. Have some picnic tables that I could meet the kids at. I'd love to see it more like a national park, that there's kids' Saturday meetings that they'd be all excited to go and learn more about the the bird sanctuary and things, and those things aren't available that I can see now. So I see it more as a natural setting for a community resource around the lake. I see it as keeping the property within some kind of control of Sutton Valley and not leave it to the outside, which it could fall into a number of different things that nobody on the board would ever have voted for. So I think that we need to move forward, and not all the decisions aren't made at the same time. Look at it as an evolution and look at it as an opportunity to provide amenities for some of the people who don't have the advantages of some of the other community members right now. So I appreciate the fact that we're doing this in a researched and solid way. Thank you.
Ryan and Josh.
Yeah, I first want to say that I do, I'm agreeing. I feel that we should buy the property. I feel that it is a sound investment for this property, and I think we were elected to make these decisions. And that's what the 9 of us are able to do, to act on behalf of the community, to for the health of the community, for the whole community. This isn't even, this is not at all a partisan issue. This is for the entire community, so that we have all of the property that surrounds Lake Louise, so that we can preserve those 3 acres and condos won't be placed there. We can protect and we can survey our members about this issue. As far as the, I think there's a lot of speculation of things that we could do. I would be on the side of folks that would say, let's not create too much chaos or havoc. Let's provide more parking for those people who enjoy Lake Louise and preserve the character of that region for sure. But as Sandy so eloquently put it, that we shouldn't make all these decisions. We don't have to make all these decisions right now, right? We have a surveying mechanism. We have a long-range planning procedure, and we can survey the community, after we acquire it. The property was very well cared for, the inspector said after the inspection. There no major damage, no mold. There was a lot of lies being thrown around about that. And so, yeah, I'm in favor of the property, and I'm also in favor of having our staff people have a reasonable office to work in during, at least for a period of time. So, thanks.
Josh.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute, but I'm hitting no, I'm trying to lower the hand, but I'm muting. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, first of all, I humbly apologize, Timmy. I was a little loud about that. I'm a little on the edge with some of the stuff that's going on. So I'm so sorry that I got loud about what I perceived as a threat, which I still do. I don't think that's really necessary, because I think we all know about some of these things, but I'm sorry. Secondly, it's a quick decision, but I mean, there's so much opportunity here. And, the first thing that I thought of with this place is that I always thought it was Sutton Valley when I first moved here. I thought that's the beacon central place. And now I'm sitting on your board of directors. I'm probably going to get criticized for this, but, I think a lot of people think that Sutton Valley property, that building is like, it's a central hub when you go into gate 2, or, you got to go golf or whatever you're going to do out there. So, I mean, I just start thinking, what that can look like. You got a monument sign out there. It could be nice. You can have like a fountain or a, sculpture or something like that. There's all kinds of stuff that can be done there. And yeah, if, the lower floor is dedicated to admin staff, which I think is great, because those guys kind of work in a dungeon and there's no windows. And I've done that for many years and it's kind of tough. I think that's great. And there's, room upstairs, there can be committee meetings or whatever. I mean, all that stuff can be decided. One thing I do know is that every time this property does go up, people always have something to say about it, and it's usually pretty positive, and it's like what we can do here, what we can do there. No, I don't support putting a coffee shop in there. I think that would be a terrible business decision. They've already had like coffee at the barn and stuff like that, and I don't think that really does good. I mean, you really need a lot of traffic for that. But what I do see is a central hub, like you get more access to the trail there, some more parking, it's going to be more accessible to people. You walk in, that whole area can be a nice welcome center with shelves full of Sun Valley swag and all that kind of stuff, and a nice reception area with a sign in the back and, all that good stuff, mission statement on the wall. And if you're a local realtor and you want to show someone the area, you take them you meet me at the, Sutton Valley admin office, whatever you call it. They go there and they get a taste of what this community has to offer right off the bat. They're not going through, I love the woods, but getting to the admin office now, it's like you're kind of just, going someplace that doesn't really exist in your mind yet. But when you drive up there in gate 2, that thing's like a beacon, So like instead of walking into admin to pay your dues or finding out about something, it doesn't feel like you're at a DMV. You got the glass there, you got your pin on the little chain and everything like that. And I wanted to touch on Kim's point about the emails. If, I would not ever validate any kind of voting system like that, because I know you mentioned that, but one of the emails that struck me, it was like, how do you live with yourselves? Like, that's one that we got. I mean, I question myself that every day, but I mean, that's a really deep philosophical thing to ask about purchasing a building. But one of the emails that we received was really positive and had all these ideas in it. And the one that was great was something about the Sutton Valley Naturalist Group, and which, to clarify, I don't think that's like a nudist thing. It's like, people that are doing stuff with animals and, trees and all that stuff, taking pictures and all that kind of stuff. But, having their meetings start off there, and it's almost like a trailhead, and I think there's just so much opportunity that can happen. And, I agree with Kevin. I don't want to see anything too crazy going there. And I think being able to preserve that spot is wonderful. And it gives an opportunity for community members and our admin staff, who, even though they weren't on the maintenance crew, they were working really hard through all these winter times and everything like that. And I think they deserve a good spot, and we need a good central spot. And that's my spiel.
Sam?
I was just over there a few minutes ago, walking around, and I looked at the building from across the lake, and as far as that goes, it's, if you were looking from standing at the building and looking across, seeing some of the houses, it's kind of the same effect. I don't see a need to hide that building. It's far enough away, and that parking lot is a bigger deal than that other areas. It's like that parking lot is very, very important. That parking lot would allow our residents from other areas to easily get there, because there's another thing I've seen all the time, because I happen to drive around and snoop quite a bit, and the access, people crossing the road at those condos and coming out of the admin area, it's you're putting people on the road right there. It's always there. It's not a good place. And there's people parking over there because there's only 4 or 5 spots to park. And open up the parking lot, our members can be over there. And a big thing is our staff. It's like I've seen these stuff on social media about turnover and staff treatment, and that would be a way to keep staff. It would show them we give a hoot about their well-being. Whereas, keeping them in a dungeon over there, it's like we can, you're not going to cut windows into those places down there. It ain't happening. We're not, without restructuring the entire admin building, which, that's, no, that's not happening. We already have that building is ready to go, and it gives us backup rooms. So if we have a problem at the dance barn, in some areas, move some stuff out of there, or if we need to move from the admin. It's like, we're sitting here, we had a discussion about where to put staff when we want to get in there and tear out the ceilings and fix all the stuff, do the plumbing, electrical, upgrade the admin. And say, and we talked about putting some temporary structures in the parking lot, which doesn't have any spot to do that. And there's no spots nearby. I'd actually had a resident tell me, oh, the place to put it would be down at the marina, which no way. It's just a done deal as far as allowing us to get some work done. And that building was in amazing shape. I walked through there 6-7 years ago, and it was needing some work. And well, I was impressed. It was really nice. It's a wonderful place. And that parking lot is a wonderful place for the members. And it's not that Lake Louise is not just for a few people. I'm sorry, the one guy is wanting to keep it really quiet. Well, we can. And the staff using that parking lot, they pull in and park, and that's it. And they're in the building. They're not bothering anybody. And then if building was shut down, end of the day, security could even pop in and out of there and use part of that. It would improve accommodations for our staff immensely. And then we could really look at the admin building and see what we could do to make that better, because that thing was pretty well dated. It was built way back when, back then. You don't see anything in there that's really saying they built that for today. Not even close. But the parking lot, I walked the trails and I went around behind there too. And yes, there is wetlands back there. There's some beautiful scenery back there and places to put benches, maybe a little covered things. There is a cover back in that area that needs to be redone. But walking all along that trail, I wouldn't see that would expand traffic by having that. That trail will probably get about the same amount of use. It's just that people will have a better parking lot. And if we are using that building for Sutton Valley transactions, it's like, and also like everybody says, big old sign right there. It says, here it is right here. Not driving around through all the beautiful trees, wondering where is it exactly. And you park right there, and it's a few feet in a flat level space to get into the building, which is easy access for people. And there would be plenty of ways. It's just simple, and everybody wants to come in there, get paperwork. There's possible to have somebody there. If you'd walk in and ask ACC questions in a beautiful little area, it's really nice. I think we could get a lot of use out of that. But that parking lot, you just can't get that anywhere. And we could to where we could have plenty of little tables. We could put some tables out there and utilize that as for nature hikes and have a base area there. And just simple things. It's like, there is no doubt we're not going to go in there and try to get wetlands changed into anything. But there's plenty of beautiful scenery right around there. And I just know that getting people off of that road going into the golf course area is a good idea. And people with dogs lurching out there, that's a safety issue. But mostly it just opens up access for our members to be able to safely get in there and park and hike those trails. And they'll be quiet about that. There's nobody goes over there, does anything crazy. And then that gets back to the biker bar business. There would be no biker bar stuff over there getting put in. There wouldn't be, some crazy stuff going on. It's like, and every time we talk about trying to create businesses and draw traffic, the drawbacks to that. We're asking a bunch of traffic to come into our neighborhoods. It's like, so there's a limited amount of things we could do anywhere. We just, that would lock it up. That would lock up that area and have that all be Sutton Valley. That's huge. That's a big deal, because also that lake is very special. And ask the golf course how special that lake is, because when we need water, that's important. And we can control that space from some damaging businesses, because it is true. I went through that in Vegas. They tried to put a strip joint right next to our neighborhood, and they could legally do it. We had to fight to keep that away from there, and it was we just don't need that kind of fight. And then so that's a losing battle too. It's like somebody buys that property and they could do what they want with it and follow the rules. That's all we got, and there was nothing we could do. Nothing. It's like this really is a place just to lock that up and keep it quiet and safe, and treat our staff like they should be treated. It's like those people that's our staff. They're very important, and we got to start treating all of those people with the respect they deserve, because they do a good job, and they'll do a better job if show them some respect. And sitting in closets without windows, that's been nuts. That's I see that stuff over there, and I can't believe that. It's like that was like a temporary fix from 1975. So it's time for us to step up and realize everybody else wants to work in an office that would have at least a nice surrounding and some windows. And so it's time to treat ourselves better and open up that parking lot for all of us. And then any other little addition we want to do in that area, it's like, you're right, we can make those decisions down the road, but we can't if it's gone. That's it. Thank you.
All right, I know there's a couple more hands. Kanu, I was trying to give everybody a chance to speak once first. Do you want to talk, or Nancy? Let Kanu go. And
Hi, yes. First of all, sorry for being late. It's not easy with a 4-month-old.
understandable.
Thank you. I've heard all the points, and I just have 3 points I want to make. The reason I think this is a good purchase, first of all, I think coming from the San Francisco Bay Area and having grown up there, I think that purchasing property when it's still relatively inexpensive in a coveted area such as Sutton Valley is a really good thing to do, because it's only going to go up in value. We may say that right now, whatever the value of the property is, it's only going to go up, and we're going to look at this in a few years and really think of this as a good decision. That's my first reason. The second is just similar to what Sam just said. This offers our staff a place that's kind of more inspiring than the current clubhouse. The clubhouse probably has a use. I don't think it's to place staff who we trust for our members, as well as for ourselves. The third reason that I really think that this is a good purchase is actually commercial value. Commercial value in the sense of it could be a coffee shop, Josh, it doesn't have to be. It could be anything that, we kind of see in the future. But if the location of where it is, it's really important to see that not just people who live in Sutton Valley would be able to go there. So sorry. But also anyone that is just coming from Geneva or from downtown Bellingham kind of sees this like as a little bit of an oasis when they go and visit either Lake Louise or Lake Whatcom. So I think this is a good purchase. It could be. And so those are just my thoughts that I wanted to share.
all right. Brian, you had your hand up first if you want to go. If Nancy doesn't want to speak.
Yes, I just wanted to reassure or just reaffirm Sam's points about the parking. And, there's a lot of like those little pocket parks around the community that really don't have adequate parking. It's really hard to find a place to park. So it's great. It'd be great to have a place in the community, with parking, with adequate parking. I wanted to just kind of rehash what Josh was saying about the Kim had mentioned about the emails. And yeah, there were a bunch of folks given inappropriately given inside information, and those emails grew directly out of that with that small group that is calling for recall and things like that. And it's really fascinating to me seeing this board and what we've accomplished with the budget and all of that, taking care of all the buildings, when in fact I remember when this board majority came into being, everybody was complaining and concerned about the amenities. I unraveling and the being shuttered and all that stuff. Remember the talk of the shuttering of amenities, and it's wonderful to be down the road with y'all and have the amenities all, you know, thriving and being taken care of. And we're also considering buying another key piece of property without having to raise dues. So I think that's something to applaud. So.
Nancy, you got your hand up, so I'll let you go first since you haven't spoken, then Timey.
Okay, what I'd like to see if we do buy it, and I can see the pros of buying it, is a way for the community to weigh in on what they'd like to see there. It has great parking, and that's a real issue in Sutton Valley. It's a nice place to walk. It'd be a nice place to hang out. And I could really see it as a community area. What I can't quite see it as is a permanent office space for administration when we have that big clubhouse and it's going to be fixed up, at least as I understand it's going to be fixed up. So maybe if we buy it, we can have some sort of a survey or a suggestion thing going that people can give their ideas. I like the nature thing. That'd be nice. I don't expect peace and quiet. And I don't want to see that parking lot full of food trucks and their litter all over the place. So maybe I'm a minority in that. Anyway, that's about all I have to say. I can't vote, so I'm not going to take up your time.
Timey?
Okay, we've gone really far down this road really quickly. And obviously, Kim and I are in the minority on this issue. And it's something that I get a little bit emotional about. But I'm just asking that if you're going to put an offer in, before you do that, can we get a feasibility study to see if what can be done with that project, with that property, and B, can we get appraisals, because we are taking the owner's word for the value of the property. And, you know, is she right? Is she wrong? What if that property is only worth $1 million and we're overpaying by 500,000? What if it's only worth 1.2? I think, you know, if we are supposed to get 3 bids on a $2,500 purchase, should we not get 3 appraisals on a property worth 1.5 million before we make an offer?
Josh, then Sonia.
I'm not sure about any of that, but I think there's a lot of good ideas there. I think Nancy's idea is great about, you know, bending the ear of the community and seeing what we can do with this afterwards. I lost my train of thought. But you know, I think you know, Timey's putting an appraisal worth on it. I mean, I don't know what it can possibly appraise for, but I think there's value here that goes beyond appraised value. And I think a lot of directors here have already stated that those values. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity here, and there's an opportunity for us to keep control of that area, and which is going to be a great thing for that lake and the people around it and the community at large.
Sonia?
Yeah, I was just going to pretty much say what Josh stated, which is, would those appraisals actually change the outcome of the vote? I don't believe they would, because our reasoning for wanting that piece of property has everything to do with controlling the Lake Louise and that area, that parcel of property that we have absolutely no control over. And it's for the future. It's preserving the future of this association. You know, I don't think any of us want to see a junk store or something there painted with, you know, crazy colors and shiny streamers and all of that stuff right at the entrance of one of our main gates. the other aspect is that she's actually selling it to us at a discounted rate, which you're aware of. And we already know that a couple of years ago, one of the people was very vocal, or sometime recently, there is a couple of local realtors that have been very aggressive about wanting that property, but also trying to bring the price down. This is the price she's selling it at. She's not going to come down. And so at the end of the day, what are we going to do? Is it going to make a difference? What's the value to this association? It has a tremendous value to this association and the membership today and going forward. And as far as the feasibility, that entire 3.9 acres is zoned small town commercial. The entire 3.9 acres is zoned small town commercial. What you're talking about a residential property is the fact that a residential property can be built there and it can be subdivided. And the amount of wetlands that you're referencing is a very small wetland, but the reality is throughout our entire community and throughout all of Sutton Valley's properties, we have wetlands, that we are in the watershed. That's to be expected. So, the feasibility is just like all of the other property right abutting it. And we actually own all of the SVCA owns all the property surrounding that one parcel. We own every bit of that property. So we know what the feasibility is because we own all of that property. We maintain all of it currently. So we're very aware of what we're able to do with it and what we're not able to do with it. So there's not really a need for a feasibility study. And the value is based on, we have a very special interest in that property. And we're at a very special time in this association to where we have the ability to move on this. So it's a little different than the other people that are looking for to put a real estate office or a biker bar in there. They have different interests than we do. Thank you.
I think Kim was next and then Sandy.
Yeah, I am listening to board input. I'm hearing lots of wonderful ideas about changing the tone of the community. I am concerned though about the idea that it can be for staff, it can be for community. I know for myself walking through that building, I'm not sure if all of the admin staff can even fit in there, much less have admin staff and then talk about community. So I think if we're going to move forward with this, we really need to be intentional about what its use is for. And we really need to be clear so that we're not making more promises than are actually real. When I'm looking at the number of people in admin, I don't think there's room for both. So if we're saying we don't want to be fork-tongued and promise, oh, we want staff to be able to work in a beautiful building. Oh, and we want to be able to use it for the community and this and that and the other. I think we really need to be clear about what our intentions are. And I'm hearing that it's to move staff out of the admin building, and it can't be both. So we need to be very clear about what it's for so that people know what they're, what they're getting or what they're paying for. And that's where I don't hear the clarity. And I like the idea of asking for community input, but and Josh, I stated that first before Nancy. You gave Nancy credit for it. I actually
That's fine. You can take all the credit you want, Kim.
But Nancy and I support each other in that. But I'm not hearing any clarity around the purpose. I'm hearing we need to buy first and then figure out that part later, which is okay. But I think we need to be transparent and upfront about why we want that building and what it's going to be used for, because it can't be used for everything. It's not that big.
Sandy?
So for me, it's keeping the opportunity in the hands of the Sutton Valley homeowners versus losing any of those future opportunities. So for me, maybe the decision is phase one, immediate phase, move admin there, fix up admin back at the clubhouse. I don't think we have to have the 10-year plan, but if the purchase is not made, then we have no opportunity to make any plan. So that's the big difference to me. Thanks.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Sandy that it can evolve a bit. And I do think there's some ability to have it be a space for both. Like, you know, the community members do come to admin to interact with staff, to ask questions, to get forms, to pay dues, to do that stuff. There's a very nice space upstairs that could be used for meeting space. That has a great view overlooking the lake. It even has a little balcony deck off of it too, like, you know, and it can double as a break room or something at times, you know, during the business portion of the day, you know. But I agree with Sandy, like, you know, it gives us the flexibility, you know, at this point, if we had to remodel admin and accounting, we have to send all of them to work from home, so they're not available to speak in person to any of our residents, or try to sandwich everyone into like the barn or something like that. You know, and it just gives us that additional flexibility, and I think it can evolve over time, you know, and I see a lot of benefit to that. You know, we can, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah.
Call the question.
Yes. For me, I guess I would move that the board of directors move forward with the purchase of property at 1850 Lake Whatcom Boulevard at a purchase price of $1,527,750, utilizing a loan with a 10-year term and allocating $500,000 from the 2021 operational surplus to be used as a down payment on the loan.
Second.
Does anybody want to discuss further? Call the question then. Motion was just stated. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Those opposed? So record notes, Timey and Kim are opposed. Everyone else is in favor. That passes. All right. We will move on to second round of property owner comments.
Yeah, we've got a few. Oh, we got one hand, two hands raised. Here we go. Steve, I'm going to go ahead and bring you on over. If you could give your name and address, please.
Hi, this is Steve Teskey. I live at 28 Jubilee Lane, and it's been a really good discussion. I've got a couple of negatives, unfortunately. And first of all, really nothing to do with this discussion, but calling in a SWAT team, even in jest, is not an appropriate thing to joke about. So let's never do that again. Joel's presentation on the monetary aspects of this thing was very clear. And what he said was, yes, we could afford to do this purchase that you've already decided to do. But at the end of the day, we're spending $1.5 million of the community's resources to fund this purchase that the community has not agreed to, which is a fundamental problem I have with this whole discussion. And as far as your multiple stated concerns about having a biker bar or some other ridiculous thing at the entrance of gate 2, give me a break. If somebody wanted to buy that thing, they would have done so in the last 6 years, and that includes investors that for some reason they don't think 1.5 million is worth the value of that property, whether or not you do an analysis or not. And speaking of analysis, it's called a CBA, okay, cost benefit analysis. All I've heard is discussions about, well, we might be able to do this, or we might be able to do that. That's true. And I think that's a good thing to discuss. But there's been no controlled or well thought out path to justify this purchase, other than the fact that somebody said, hey, it's going to be a good idea. Whether or not you guys had a quorum or not, you obviously discussed it. Ones, twos, doesn't matter. But you come up with the idea that this is a good thing to do. It might well be. But come on, let's have community input. Kimberly's point is absolutely crucial to this. And if you guys go ahead and say, we're going to spend $1.5 million of our resources to buy a property that the community, the majority probably doesn't even know about. And it's very frustrating to hear this. Anyway, I've worked in, by the way, I've worked in dungeons myself with no windows for years. It's called the Pentagon, and it never really bothered it. I had a picture of Mount Rainier on the wall, and that's what I got by with my window. So we need to do a cost benefit analysis, and we need to have community involvement. If not, this is just going to go from bad to worse. You guys are better than that. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I've returned you to the attendees. Looks like Nancy wants to say something.
Yes, I do. How else do you get people's attention when they've done something profoundly dangerous and disruptive to the community without hyperbole? And that's what Call the SWAT Team is. That was just an over-the-top thing for that guy to do. It is disruptive and it is threatening, particularly in light of what it's like to live in a city where people just shoot people. Not so much Bellingham, but I'm sure we have all lived in places where that happens and probably know people that it has happened to. So I found your comment offensive and belittling of a very serious circumstance, and you just discredited everything else you have to say, and that's it. Thank you.
All right, we've got Morgan up here. Morgan, I'm going to bring you over at this time. Go ahead and give your name and address, please.
Hi, Morgan, last name Libby. I live at 10 Sandalwood Circle.
Thank you.
Hi. I, in theory, am really thrilled about this because I've always been annoyed that that property wasn't part of Sutton Valley. I agree with the continuity of community that it offers us and the access to the lake and any other of the good benefits. I personally love the idea of buying it to keep somebody from developing it. I think that's lovely, and it's a worthwhile spending of my money, and I support you using my money to do that. My only objection would be if it was so sad that it turned into offices with no community use. There's such a beautiful view there. It's so close to the lake. I envision it being offices long enough to create offices that are lovely for the workers somewhere else, or in addition to lots of community access. I love the idea of a community room overlooking the lake, adding like a nature center, or I personally would love tables and a barbecue out there, where we could come, because all the barbecues in the different parks are all falling apart and are useless. So I don't, and I do have a question that if you were to move the admin staff into that building permanently, what would you then do with the current offices that we have? Because would that be wasted space? Would that be revamped? I love the idea of completely fixing El Agave, making it a a nicer restaurant, but that's kind of awkward, that L shape. You couldn't really use that to add to the restaurant space. So what would the vision be if admin staff were permanently there? And I honestly just would hate the idea that they were, or that in addition to the admin staff being there, there were no other avenues for total community use. That's what I got to say about that.
All right, thank you, Morgan. I'll go ahead and return you to the attendees as well. Next up, we have Kevin. Kevin, bringing you over here. If you could give your name and address, please. Excuse me.
Kevin, Division 20, Lot 1. You know, I appreciate Kim's comment regarding the lack of thoroughness and transparency in this process. In fact, it's evident by this very meeting. There was originally no allowance for comments after this important announcement until one board member requested it. That's not transparency. That's not good communication. You know, I've heard a lot of, I haven't heard any discussion on how this treasured area will be protected. In fact, I heard the exact opposite. I've heard about renting kayaks, serving coffee, putting up a parking lot. You know, nothing about protecting the bird sanctuary or keeping the noise down. You know, I heard statements like, "Oh, we're not going to turn it into a shiny condo." You can't guarantee that. That statement could be invalidated by the next board. You know, maybe not a condo, maybe a paintball facility. You don't know. How will you keep food trucks out, for example, from years down the road? You know, and this argument about giving discounted rates and there's no need for appraisal, that's all speculation. In fact, almost every argument was just a straw man. So, you know, arguments for this acquisition share one common denominator. There's no forward thinking. There's no discussion of what could happen with this property once the board composition changes. So, you know, and I heard some discrepancy there too. So I'm hearing that somebody disputed Timey's claim that only a fraction of the parcel is zoned commercial and the rest is R1, subject to wetland considerations as well. I mean, if that's true, that's an important consideration that was not disclosed in your presentation. But if it is, another tack would be work to rezone the property. You know, at the very least, get people involved, get the Audubon Society involved, let them weigh in. So I guess I'll just close with this. I mean, assuming the property, everybody who voted for it is assuming the property is better off in Sutton Valley, the SVCA. And that's not a given. You know, there's some very short memories on this board. Think back on all the shady things previous boards have done. How are you going to prevent that? That's my question.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Thank you again for your comments. I've gone ahead and moved you back to the attendees. And we have LW up next. If you could give your name and address, please.
Yes, it's Larry Brown, 37 Deer Run Lane.
Larry, you're a little soft. Is there anything you can do to?
Is that a little better?
That's much better. Thank you so much.
As you guys know, I was on the board for well over 6 years. 5 years ago, I can point to 3 of you who vehemently opposed the idea of providing better office space for staff. And I think I can point to another 2 of you to make a total of 5. Yet all of a sudden now, rather than building on space we already own down in the rec corridor, you have decided to buy new property and do something there that nobody asked for, that in fact in 2017 the whole community voted against and excoriated the board at the time for even having the temerity to bring it up. And now you're even talking about putting businesses in there. And I can point to one person on this board in particular who excoriated me personally in public and defamed the whole board and community in another public meeting by saying that the board had a plan to have a huge commercial center in the rec area. Now you want to have another commercial center. Why don't you just buy the lot across the street where there's already a commercial center? What the hell? You're just working with other people's money. You, that same crew, excoriated the board for borrowing $1 million in order to make needed repairs. Now you're buying it in order to buy a property that's going to need repairs. And for those of you who weren't here more than 10 years ago, I will say very clearly, the community had allowed itself to be run into a pit, a horrible pit. That's why we had to tear down 2 buildings, and another one still needs to be torn down. What in good gosh's name do you think is going to keep the board from allowing this new property to go to tarnation? And you have no plan for what you want to use it. Oh, I've heard this, that, and the other. That's called no plan. The only thing I've heard is you want the parking space. Well, guess what? One of you board members that said they're not subject to ACC, absolutely wrong. Their entire title to that property is subject to ACC approval, and they violated that approval when they put up the fence. They also violated the approval of the county, which is why the fence got shortened so much. So if you really need more parking space, buy the parking lot and have the owner of the property remove the fence that they paid to put up against the, and if you don't believe me, you're shaking your head. I can show you the stinking documents in the permanent files that are in those stupid storage boxes, because they had never been gathered until a handful of people that you say did horrible, shady things gathered all the documents together into one location and provided them a safe, lockable place to be. This is just absolutely outrageous. You people are the worst hypocrites I have ever seen. Ever, except certain people in Washington, D.C.
Larry, that's about 3 minutes. Is that enough time for now?
Well, unless you've muted me, I'm not speaking.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you, Larry. I'll go ahead and return you to the attendees now. All right, we've got Linda up. Linda, I'm going to bring you over here and go ahead and give your name and address, please.
Linda Bradley. My address is 5 Wisteria Lane, and my division lot is Division 27 and lot 68. Just a couple of things. In 2017, Larry brought up there was a vote by the membership when the board wanted to take out a large loan, in part to build new facilities. The current SURF loan is mainly a smaller loan they took out with their own approval to repair or replace or fix current facilities. But when the vote failed for the 12 million, they couldn't do that. I'm going to tell you all a section of the restrictive covenants by which I feel if you intend to buy this facility, you have to allow the membership to vote on. You don't have the authority by yourselves to proceed. And I read, said club shall have the power to charge and assess its members on an equitable basis for the operation and maintenance of said facilities provided by the declarant, and to charge and assess its members on an equitable basis for such additional recreational or other facilities as shall be duly authorized by its membership for the mutual benefit of all its members, which means a vote. That's why they voted in 2012. You can't just buy that. the charging us dues and assessments rests in the restrictive covenants. And if you can't go by the restrictive covenants, you can't charge us money. So if you want to buy this building, you need to have a special general meeting and you need to allow the membership to vote on it. And that's what that phrase says. And you can ask Rich Davis if you like.
Linda, where is that? What are you citing?
Oh, for heaven's sakes, come on, folks.
We discussed the purchase with Richard Davis, so.
Well, that's fine, but I'm telling you, if enough people
and
get
our legal
together and they
counsel
will.
has given us the
I'm
guidance,
sorry,
Linda.
Richard isn't, well, then why did he say that when in 2012, when they wanted to build new facilities, they had to? And I would question that he's correct about that. I'm serious. I have to pay dues because it says that I have to pay dues on the property that was given to us by the declarant. I do that. If you're going to buy a facility that isn't even on Sutton Valley property, and that that people are going to have ongoing charges for, you're just looking at the purchase price. I'm saying in order for you to purchase it, to be able to charge dues to us, you have to honor that part of the restrictive covenants. And Kim, it's in section 16 of the restrictive covenants, right? Kind of in the middle toward the end of that. It's a big, long section. But that's all I got to say. It's just, I don't believe, according to this, that you have the ability to do it. If you go ahead and do it without a vote of the members, it could, I don't know. But I think that suit could be brought because you haven't followed the restrictive covenants.
Thanks for your opinion, Linda.
Thank you, Linda. It looks like Nancy has a comment.
Yeah, the Washington Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act blew that out of the water, Linda. In 2012, when Richard gave the opinion, he was right to do it. But that was then, and now is Waikawa, or however it gets pronounced, isn't in fact. And we can't even vote on a special assessment at the AGM. It all has to be bundled. So I'm sorry, I hated that law because it took a lot away from us. And in this case, the only case I've ever seen something useful come out of it. I wish it would go away, but it's not going to.
I believe we have Jean up next here, if I'm not mistaken. If you could give your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Jean Maxner, 38 Longshore Lane. And I guess this has really been, I'm fairly new to the community. And I want to say this is a really disappointing meeting and outcome that I found. I'm not really pro or against buying it yet, but I actually give kudos to Kim for saying we do need community input. I think we have a few people making such a big decision, it ends up being a dictatorship. And I'm not sure what the community feels about this. I've heard a lot of things from people that I have met around here, and they either don't know about it or they're stunned and disappointed that it's going down this way. So I just think that this is not the way to go. I guess my question to you is, why not have community input? That's my question to you. Why not have community input? Can somebody answer that, Andrew?
Not answering that at this moment.
You can't answer that. So, I mean, you can't even answer why not have community input. I think that's really disappointing because we're already, I feel like this is a few people making a big decision for a lot of people. And that's just not right. It's, I guess that's what they say, that's not America. So there's that. My other concern is, you have the funds there right now, but, in some financial meetings, it's been talked about, we're going to have to increase the budget because costs are just going up. We had a lot of weather this year. that costs weren't accounted for, and so that we're taking out more money than what was originally planned for those things. I think there's a lot of things you can't anticipate, so you have to make sure you do have a large reserve and not plan on what you have. You can't put out purchases that need to be done now, because when you do, that's when things fall apart. A big example of that is those, although we aren't condos, but it's an example of what can happen if you don't invest, or those condos down in Florida that just collapse because they didn't invest in their environment, and they should have. Unfortunately, again, I'm new here, but even in the last few years, I've seen that maintenance just isn't being kept up around here. I drive up to the main building to drop off a check, and it's just in shambles. It's like, there's nobody cleaning up the gardens. They're ugly. I mean, if you can't keep that building looking nice, what's going to keep you keeping that building out front nice? You got to spend money to keep it nice. I just don't know that this has been thought about and discussed. And again, I think it's really unfortunate that you don't have community input, and you can't tell me why you don't want community input. So I guess that's my comment. It's been very disappointing as a new Sutton Valley member. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Jean. All right, moving along here. We got a lot of hands. Teresa, gone ahead and brought you over at this time. Go ahead and give your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Teresa Lee, 162 Polo Park. What a great location, and we're so lucky to have it in our community, or close to our community. But it sounds like there's still a lot of things to work out, and I'm not a big proponent of doing things quickly without a lot of thought, and not just the same folks. It's always good to have diversity of thought, and doesn't sound like there's much diversity when you won't allow, you've already voted, so it's kind of late in the game to be able to talk about it. But I don't believe that the offices and the turnover has anything to do with the space. Instead, it has more to do with the management and the treatment of the folks that actually were staff. So I don't think the turnover had anything to do with whether they had a pretty office on the lake. And then to that point is, if it doesn't fit all the staff, who gets to choose who sits there? Because that's, I don't know how you choose that. And will that help turnover if they get a window office, or if they get a lake view, or if they get to have their break on a balcony? Is that, and I wouldn't want to give the impression that Dan has a waterfront office as a brand new employee, and then maybe some other employee doesn't get that the optics of that are probably not great. So those are a couple of my points. I also wanted to talk about how many parking spaces the staff will be taking up that will then leave availability for actual residents. So this $1.5 million really doesn't benefit any of the due paying people in the community. It only sounds like it's benefiting the staff, and maybe you guys having meetings there, which is, I hate to say it, a little ironic, since you won't have meetings in person with the community, but you'll take the upstairs for a potential meeting space. And then my final point was, you said you got legal guidance on this, and I was wondering if you could share that legal opinion with the community in order to continue the transparency. If you could show that in writing, that that you have vetted this with a legal opinion, and it's not going against any of the Washington laws or our Sutton Valley charter. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Teresa. Nathan is up next. Nathan, bringing you over here. If I could have your name and address, please.
Yep, Nathan Euland, 2 Summerbell Lane. The first thing I'd like to say is that, Nancy, I do want to apologize if you felt threatened at all by the pictures being taken. They were promptly taken down afterwards. And I can think of one board member who is sitting there smiling when she's seeing people getting upset about this vote, who would do the exact same thing, taking pictures, filming board members, doing shady things that she, thought to be shady. All of that's not okay. An eye for an eye is not okay. So I apologize for that. The second thing I want to say is the community did a public gift card appreciation drive for maintenance. We did that during the flood and during Christmas twice, 2 times. Instead of anybody coming to the person, namely me and the other people collecting the money and saying, you know what, staff can't accept that or whatever, they decided to reprimand the staff and call it a bribe. So I'm a little defensive when it comes to things like this. So I took the pictures. Yes, I took them and I took them down because I realize an eye for an eye is not okay. So now you're telling me that you're going to buy a $1.5 million lot in order to help the staff? It's a real hypocritical move. I'm going to echo some of the comments here.
No one
Some of these board
reprimanded
members-
staff, by the way, just to clarify that.
Okay. Either way.
So that's misinformation.
No, it is not.
Yeah, it
but
is.
anyway, okay.
I
So
would have been the
for
one
those
that
who are-
reprimanded staff. They were simply told that's against our policies.
And it was publicly called a bribe, but okay. The last thing that I'm going to say is to everybody who's listening, who's upset with this, there is a recall going on. SuttonValleyStrong.com is where you can see it. Go ahead and take a look at social media. We're going to have petitions going around for a recall on the executive committee. Thank you.
Good luck.
All right, thank you, Nathan. We've got Ann up next.
Just a real quick response to Nathan. Nathan, you've reached out to me in the past. I did get your email today. It's kind of weird to, when you say thank you for doing what you do, and then I'm on a recall. I'm actually really surprised about all that. But if you ever see me out there, man, just come up and say hi. I don't bite, and I'd love to talk with you.
And I'd like to add that I'm part of the executive committee. So if you're recalling me, I did not vote for this initiative. So I want you to think about that as well.
All right, Ann, go ahead with your name and address, please.
Ann Cope, 52 Louise View Drive. I don't even know where to start with all of this. I'm actually disappointed in what Kim just said. Kind of throwing her other board members on the bus for a recall. I don't think any of you should be recalled, and I think you should be standing with your fellow board members. Larry Brown, my God. 2017, he told the Cascadia Weekly that the community committed suicide for not going with, their big design. So, and for him to, yes, he admitted, I was there for more than 6 years. Things have been run down. Thanks for admitting that. Thanks for letting us know you let that happen. As far as the property, I think it's a great idea. The pocket parks here have no parking. The 2 pocket parks in gate 1 or wherever, if you try to go, you're treated as if you don't belong as a dues paying member. They exclude members of this community who support them. So yes, more space for more community members is a great thing. On a totally different subject, last week, Mr. Gibbs called in and said that the reporter for the Bellingham Herald told him that Sutton Valley shared documents saying he was an employee. I contacted the reporter because I was concerned why my name was used in the article and who directed that article. She confirmed that she found Mr. Gibbs a document online, a Sutton Valley document online, with him listed as a dockmaster volunteer. So all of his comments last week about the board sharing information, Sutton Valley sharing information, claiming he's an employee, were untrue. Another untruth from Mr. Gibbs. And that's it. Thanks.
And I'd like to add, I did not throw my fellow board members under the bus. I have not thrown anybody under the bus. I made my statements of my opinion on this matter, and I will support the board's decision because they're a majority, but I don't like taking responsibility for things that I didn't do.
My point is that you're not being recalled because of this decision.
It's not helping.
Excuse me?
It's not helping.
Well, that shouldn't be part of your decision.
Agree to disagree, Anne. You have an opinion and so do I.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. All right, I'll return you back to the attendees. Got a few more hands here. We've got Joel. Joel, if you could give your name and address, please.
Hey guys, yeah, Joel Dobbins, third time no speak. Full disclosure to everybody, I was on the board for a year in 2021, so I'm not, yeah, I just feel like that's worth mentioning just with many of these guys. So we didn't hang out almost at all other than over Zoom. But yeah, I have spoke with them to address a couple of things. First, the previous caller who said, I think his name was LW, who said the community allowed itself to be run into the ground. That sounds a lot like blaming the victim, which for the prior board majority is par for the course, pun intended. I agree that it would be great to see a legal opinion just because that's what I usually ask. And I think consistency is good. However redacted it would just be great to see. I just think that's reassuring for people, especially with a large purchase like this, to know that what you're doing is defensible. Personally, this surprised me. I'm not in cahoots with anybody, so this was really came as a surprise to find out this was happening. Unfortunately, the clue to this happening was that you guys were being stalked, and called and apologized for that. But the was done online. You guys were harassed, so too little, too late there. We have been called Nazis in the last, threatened with frivolous lawsuits. You guys, even just tonight, over personal angst. That's really ridiculous. Scolded by, yeah, like Ann said, a former board president, Larry, who publicly shamed our HOA in the press. And this wildly aggressive misinformation campaign, guys, and anyone who supports you, as well as trying to out of 3 years ago or so, just seems really wild. So as far as I have a trip, one of my favorite things about it is that being developed in the same light that I don't care what you could fill. I'm just happy that it's not going to be developed further. At least that's my hope. And I really think conservation, especially for around here, people are concerned about development and everything. So yeah, everybody's concerned about development. Let's make it about conservation, about nature. And yeah, the community was run into the ground by people who intentionally didn't maintain it. And now those people are saying, well, how are we supposed to maintain this? It seems pretty self-explanatory to me. Just calling you and getting back in control. Last point, the Sutton Valley Strong Recall website, Bellingham Homes, a local. We should check out best.
Joel, you're breaking up. We'd like you to be able to say this and for everybody to hear it. That you're breaking up and we're missing crucial parts of your communication. So I'd like you to maybe go back and let's make sure we hear this.
Sure. Yeah. I'll speak a little slower too. Sutton Valley Strong, the website hosting the recall information, is being hosted by Best. You should check out Best Bellingham Homes to see who is championing the Sutton Valley Strong recall effort and ask yourselves why they would be so inflamed about a real estate purchase that they have nothing to do with. I think that's a pretty big clue. So that's my final point. Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks, Joel. All right, we've got Megan up. Megan, I've brought you over again. Go ahead and unmute, and if you give your address again, please.
Yes, Megan and Plum Lane, 4 Plum Lane, Gate 3. Am I heard all right?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. After teaching on Zoom for quite a while, it's not a given. Just want to say, Kim, I really appreciate how you spoke to community involvement. And I echo in your disappointment at the direction that this vote has taken. I am curious if there's been discussion in closed session or if there hasn't been discussion on the financial ramifications of this decision going forward for the community. I don't know that we've ever been in the position to purchase commercial property before. And as an HOA with nonprofit status, what does that mean for us owning commercial property? Will we be paying property taxes on this property? Would this property be put into trust like some of the properties we own or separate? I feel like there's a lot of pieces on that end that I don't know if they've been considered, or maybe they have, but it was in closed session. So it's hard to understand how this will work going forward. When I look on the Whatcom County Assessor website for this tract of property you've just voted to purchase, the assessed value of it is right around $500,000. And obviously assessed values for property tax purposes are always lower than the actual value of the property. But I also appreciate Taimi saying, we should get an appraisal on a property we're buying. And that's just good business sense. Anyone selling something can say, well, I'm only selling it for $1.5 million. But if you as the board have committed $1.5 million of our dollars and we come to find out, it's worth $1 million, have you just wasted $500,000? Or should that have gone to the community for consideration? Is it worth buying a property for 1.5 times what it's worth to keep it as a conservation effort? And, I could support that personally, but I'm one member of this community, and so are all of you one member of the community. And I do hope that you look into what Linda said as well about, do you have the ability to purchase property like this? And maybe Wakoya has allowed that. But I know many of you sitting on the board now were vehemently against what Wakoya did. So then to use an aspect of Wakoya to do something without community approval seems very untoward. I just can't support that action. So my question for you to consider moving forward is, how is this financially going to work out over time? How can future financial decisions be made with more than one day of discussion? I just can't believe you took a vote after one day of public community discussion to spend $1.5 million and tie us to a brand new property. It's kind of mind-boggling, honestly. And I have been very critical of past boards, and I voted for nearly every one of you sitting on this board. I am not an opposer, but I'm somebody who questions what's happening. And I feel like I'm a thoughtful person, and I would appreciate the community being looped in on these things and not to have all this uproar and upset and response that happens when people feel like they're in the dark. I think that's just not a way to operate. So thank you, Kim. Thank you, Taimi. I'm just disappointed in how this went down tonight.
Right, thank you, Megan.
To reiterate, for I think the 4th time tonight, our legal counsel has been involved in the purchase of this property. So.
Hey, this is just layman stuff, but, I think before Kim, Joel, Brian, Justin were on the board, there was a golf cart fleet that was pushed through, and it was a lot of money. And I'm not sure what the markup is there, what the value is there for all of the community, but I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was like 300, 200 grand or something like that.
600.
600. Okay, see. My memory's so foggy from all the PTSD. But so I think about that. I think about the golf course bridge that we all voted for. I'm sure a lot of the people that are detractors of us right now would probably thought that we wouldn't vote for stuff like that. You know, some of those votes are really hard. I look at it as my dues dollars, and I don't golf, you know, but it's something that keeps the association operating. And you know, one of my good friends out there who is unfortunately for recalling me, which is super disappointing. But you know, we had a running thing of like how many hazard trees would each of these bids actually end up being. And you know, everything, like if you put it like that, like, you know, 200 grand, wow, how many hazard trees could we take care of there? But you know, I think this is an investment that's going to last for a while, and I think it's poses a great opportunity. And regardless of what anyone feels about a certain law or whatever, I mean, you know, sometimes it's you have to do the thing that you think is right, and I think this is a right idea for this community. And I think if some of you folks that are against it, if you put your politics aside and just imagine opportunities and, you know, being able to be down there at the trail and having a place to sit down that's not a log or just a rickety old bench, and, you know, having a spot there, I think it would be really great. And, you know, regardless of the recall and all the crazy political stuff going on right now, just I'd recommend just taking a breath and thinking of, you know, what opportunities our community has with that. So thanks.
I'd like to piggyback on what Josh said. $1 million almost for a golf course irrigation system, hundreds of thousands of dollars for fire suppression on the docks that serve like what, 3 dozen boats. Like, you know, this is an investment that the whole community can benefit from, that's open to the whole community, that won't cost anyone a dime to come utilize the space. Like, and so yeah, I think Josh makes a really good point. Kim, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Thanks. Yeah, there's, I mean, I don't want to recap our discussion because this is community comment time, but I just, to recap me and Timey's sentiments, there's heart decisions, there's head decisions, and then the best decisions combine both. And I heard a lot of heart, you know, things that make this a good decision for the community and, you know, kind of the feely thing. I just think we didn't do our due diligence, and the community member that said, you know, cost benefit analysis and getting community input would have made this a more digestible decision.
Cost benefit analysis assumes we're going to develop the property into some crazy elaborate thing that we've all just said that's not what we want to do. So it's really just time and money wasted, in my opinion. Kanu?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to clarify a comment that I made, and I think one of the community members had made a comment to that about commercial property. This is not meant to be a commercial property. I think what I meant is that there's an idea that there could be a coffee shop in there. So if you really think about what's going on at the clubhouse now, we have El Agave. That's potentially, that's a revenue, something that brings in revenue for us. So that's my idea of what I had meant as commercial property. The entire thing will not be commercial property. That's not the idea. And then also the other thing, a few of the board members had mentioned, it would be nice for our staff to have that, you know, maybe use that. And these are all ideas that board members are thinking. They're not written in stone. These are just things that we think, or, you know, I'll speak for myself, that I think might be worthwhile. So please know that there's nothing written concretely. It's just an idea. Just wanted to say that to clarify.
Okay, our next community member. We've got LW back. I believe this is Larry. Larry, I brought you over. If you could give your name and address again, please.
Yeah, Larry Brown, 37 Deer Run Lane. I'm not going to address the silly personal statements. I am merely going to point out not one word has been spoken about the board's consideration of the watershed restrictions that apply, not just the wetlands restrictions that apply. Those were very expensive when we did some work in Area Z, but the watershed restrictions, that is what has resulted in having left Barn 6 up so long and not torn it down. Because once we tear it down, we have 12 months to build there or we lose it. Why? Because it's in the Lake Whatcom watershed with very specific, very restrictive requirements. Nobody has said, have you talked to the county? What do they think about this? Will they allow a business to continue in that spot simply because one is there now? Will they require something else to be done to handle that particular lake, which we have the right to pull water from for the golf course, but the county may decide, along with the state, that we need to do more to protect the quality of that water, since what doesn't get used ends up in Lake Whatcom. There are many things that have simply not been addressed, whether you looked at them or not. The public hasn't heard you discuss them, reveal them, and therefore it didn't happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
All
I'm
right,
pretty
thank
familiar with the Lake Whatcom watershed regulations, and they require development to trigger stuff to be done, you know, and I think we're all talking here about not rebuilding a whole bunch of new stuff on that lot and doing all of that stuff. So like the county can't just come in and change your property because they decide they want to. That's called condemnation, and they'd have to buy the property from us if they're going to restrict our uses of it from what's existing.
Kanu, did you have a hand raised or was that from before?
Sorry, from before.
No problem, I'll take care of it here. All right, we've got Trevor up next. Trevor, I brought you over to the meeting. If you could unmute and give your name and address, please.
Hi, it's Trevor and Mary Quinn, 12 Spinnaker Lane.
Thank you.
All I want to say is thank you to Kim and Timey for asking this board to take a minute to consider the ramifications of buying this property and what the community is thinking about it. I don't think everything has to be rushed. I think we can take a minute and get another appraisal and look at different options. It seems very rushed to me, and I really don't think the board has given it full consideration. My comment to Joel Dobbins regarding the recall is not about this one accusation about the board meeting without a quorum and inspecting properties. It's about the transparency of this board and not communicating to the community. And this has been going on for too long, and I think this has to change. Anyways, that's all I have to say, but I am going to thank you, Kim and Timey, for having the guts to stand up to the rest of the people on this board who will obviously want you to always vote in their way, but you actually have the community's best interests for saying, hey, can we take a minute and let the community talk about this for a minute, instead of somebody finding out 2 days ago that you're having a meeting about it. And hey, guess what? We're spending $1.5 million buying this property for staff offices. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. And we've got Steve up again. Steve, if you could give your name and address one more time.
Hi, Steve Teskey, 28 Jubilee Lane. I'd like to comment about the CBA, cost benefit analysis. I don't think it's really a waste of time, because what essentially it is the idea that before you make a purchase, not after you make a purchase, it's a study to say, is this purchase worthwhile? And you have to justify that purchase. And I've heard a lot of really good ideas about what could come out of this purchase, but I've also heard counters. So why don't we just, as we just heard, why don't we just take a little bit and say, we need to look a little bit deeper into this, not only the benefits, but the cost side, which has also been brought up numerous times, about 1.5 million. And that's per the selling party. So when was the last time you went in to buy a car and said it's going to be $30,000 and just said, can you do better? I don't know. Maybe you've already done that. I don't know. Where's the transparency? I'd really like to hear that. So anyway, it's an investment. All of us are committed, will be committed to pay for if this goes through. And based on your vote tonight, I'm hearing that we really don't have any choice. We have to support it with our dollars. So I really encourage you to think hard before you sign the check to buy this place for 1.5 million. I mean, if you can get it for 1.0 million, that might be the best buy on the planet. But you know, let's look a little bit harder at this. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Steve. And we've got Jean up. Jean, if you could give your name and address one more time.
Hi, this is Jean Maxner, 38 Longshore Lane. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One is that when it was discussed about the golf carts, those golf carts are leased, and the golf course recoups money by charging for the use of those golf course carts. So although, yeah, you put money out over time, you also get money back for the use of those golf carts. So there's that. The other thing, again, I just don't want to, this has been reiterated now several times, but I think the biggest problem right here is transparency. Again, when we talked about things that were okay for the golf course or the other projects, those were all brought up in financial committee meetings that were open to the public and discussed. So there was nothing hidden about it. It was all open discussion. So, you know, the first time I heard about this, this project that we're talking about tonight was last night at the finance meeting. So, and I'm on the finance committee. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So I just think the whole issue stems from transparency and not actually wanting community input, which is, again, disturbing for many of the people here. People are determining our lives without our say-so. Seems like this is going on all over the country. And I think it's unfortunate because it's causing a lot of problems because there isn't transparency and there isn't the ability to have input, fair input. So that's it. That's all I'll say. And yeah.
All right, thank you, Jean.
I'd like to point out that, yeah, the golf carts are a lease and we recoup money, but the membership actually pays for the golf carts while the golf course reaps the operational profits of the golf carts, which then goes towards the operational profit, which actually then goes towards bonuses and stuff per the contract with our golf course director and other staff there, and does not actually really benefit the membership in all that much of a significant way, and we pay for it.
All right.
I'd
Next
also like to just point out that we keep hearing that we're not asking community input, and yet nobody on this has been a repeated statement, which is that this is all a work in progress, that community input. AJ said it when he spoke, I said it, most of the directors said it. So we're going to be looking for community input to determine how best to utilize that space over there. It's meant to be a member space, and we are going to want community input. So it's simply not true that there won't be any community input on this. But this was a decision, a long-term decision, a strategic investment into this community. And it does not equate to a 18-year, $14 million loan that was going to tear down the only piece of historical building that was left, which was the dance barn. Larry Brown is equating what we're doing with that behavior. It's not the same. We're not shoving a $14 million loan. We're not putting a special assessment on anybody. This is not going to increase your dues. This is giving you something additional at no cost to you. It's to help our community and to help us be the community that everyone expressed in the community survey that they want to be. Thank you.
All right, we've got Cheryl up next. Cheryl, I brought you over to the meeting. If you could give your name and address, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
You're a little bit quiet.
Okay, is that any better?
That is better, thank you.
Okay, all right. Cheryl Taylor, 6 Caddy Lane. I heard a lot of ideas tonight and a lot of concerns. Not absolutes, with the exception of one thing, and that is that if Sutton Valley purchases the property, then we can collaborate as a community as far as what can be done with it, and hopefully, you know, listen and get that input that every one of you have said that, you know, you do want. Unfortunately, you know, this has moved fast. It's caught everybody off guard. So yeah, it doesn't feel like we've had a chance to speak. But the one absolute I'm hearing is that if we don't purchase this property, there will be no community input. There will be no control over that property, and anything could happen to it. Yes, whoever buys it's going to have to deal with watershed restrictions and the wetland situation. But if we don't take care of it, who is? Everybody wants input. Everybody has an idea on how it should be used, how it should be assessed, how it should be looked at. You know, what we can do. God, let's do a study, whatever. But the bottom line is, we don't purchase it, we don't get that option, we lose it. So, you know, I hope that you can make the time to get a little more community feedback, to assuage these fears and concerns that people have expressed. I think that you will. I think the desire is there from every one of you. I do agree with Tiny that, you know, getting those assessments is a good idea. You know, and with every purchase everybody else makes, you always negotiate a little bit. So, you know, I hope that you will look at all of those issues. But quite frankly, I like the idea. I know that when the fence went up, I was offended. And quite frankly, Mr. Brown was quite willing to allow those extra $3 to subsidize the golf course when it was running a deficit. So now that the golf course is holding its own and doing so much better, you know, those extra $3 or whatever going towards a community center that everybody could use would be kind of nice. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. All right, next up we have Tom. Tom, if you could give your name and address, please.
Hi, Tom Henning, 27 Parr Lane.
Thank you.
Heard a lot of discussion here tonight, and I'm hearing a lot of distrust. I'm not saying the purchase of this property is a bad thing, but I didn't attend the orientation for 2022. I did attend the full orientation for 2021. And I'm looking at the Sun Valley organizational structure. At the very top of that structure is the membership. And under that is the board of directors. I think the members have a right, and I think it's really, God, I can't even find the proper word, to make a purchase of this magnitude without discussing it with a membership is horribly arrogant. And, you know, another thing about the organizational structure, the Last Views magazine, we have a new employee, Rich. He is operations assistant general manager. what have you. That position doesn't show up. Underneath membership is board of directors, general manager, and then accounting, administrative. There is no position for an operations manager or an assistant general manager. What is Dan's duties now? The duties that are described in the views are the exact same as our general managers. Are we paying two people to do the same job? So I would like that question answered. A lot of the discourse I've heard tonight comes from closed sessions. Sutton Valley operates our meetings, our structure operates under Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order definitely discusses closed sessions, what they're about, how they're to be held, and they should be held extremely rarely. Holding closed sessions promotes distrust amongst your members. Closed sessions requirements, affirmative vote in an open meeting. That has not happened. Motion must include authorized purpose. That has not happened. Authorized purpose for closed session. Personnel matters, consult with legal counsel. You say that you've gotten Rich Davis's opinion on a lot of this stuff. I could retain an attorney tomorrow. Attorney's a paid informant. I could retain an attorney tomorrow to say the exact same thing, opposite of what you guys are saying. Discuss communications with legal counsel, litigation, whether potential or pending, possible violations of governing documents of the association, possible association liability to an owner. Nowhere in there does it say that purchase of a separate property should be discussed in closed session. This should all be in open sessions. You guys are being way too secretive with your closed sessions. And it also describes what can be discussed outside of a closed session. Nothing other than what you guys are talking about in a closed session may be discussed with anybody before disclosing it to the membership. And I see Facebook.
I'm so sorry, Tom. We're moving up past 3 minutes. If we could wrap it up. Thanks.
Can you give me one more item? Because this is really important to me, and that's parcels. Andrew mentioned parcels. My wife almost died because we did not receive a certified letter. This has to end. This agreement with the post office is illegal. Nobody's been able to produce it. And I don't know if you guys can see me, but I got it right here in my hand. I have the document. It took me 5 years to get it. I had to file a complaint with the Inspector General's office, and I've got it. I wrote you guys an email, told you what was in it, but this practice needs to end. It's illegal. And I'll give it up with that.
All right. Thank you, Tom. All right. Next up, we have Karen. All right, Karen, I've brought you over. If you give your name and address, please.
Karen Hardesty, 25 Oakcrest Circle.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks are due to John and the good work in handling these conversations. You are amazing. Cost benefit analyses, they're very hard to do when the benefits are very difficult to price. I've been involved in these things. I have done these kind of analyses, and they're very difficult when some of the benefits don't have an exact price. I don't know how to tell you how much it would be worth to me to be able to sit somewhere where it's relatively quiet and enjoy the lake. How do you value those things? It's very challenging. To pay someone to help us with analysis like that would be very difficult. Tom Henning brought up, as well as other people, that he believed that this was arrogant of you to consider purchasing a property without involving all of us. To me, it was incredibly arrogant of other boards to let properties completely fall apart without asking me if that was what I wanted, because I didn't. I wanted to preserve what was there. I didn't want everything to fall apart. But that's what happened as soon as I got here. No one asked me about those things. It's a challenging job that you have. Not everything can come by everyone. I believe that that land, which you did not display, but I have tried to show people a map of, surrounded by Sutton Valley property, purchasing it simply gives us more control over our own environment, and that we will have membership input into it in the future, what should be done for years and years and years. And I hope that my hope is that it focuses on less development, more nature, and that the threats that Larry made about, oh, if you develop this and you develop that, you have to look into the watershed and whatever. Pretty sure all of you know that. And you never discussed big time development. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much, Karen. All right, next up we have Susan. Susan, if you could give your name and address, please.
Susan Banton, 1 Highcliff Lane. That's in gate 13. Thank you, board, for all the hard work. I can see the plus and minuses on the purchase price, but all I want to say now is please get the input soon about the admin building and the uses, because if you're going to do construction with the kitchen and that sort of thing, there can be some cost savings. And I would appreciate if the property is not going to be permanent front office type of thing, that there's not a lot of money spent in redesign and redevelopment of that area. And as again, I can see the plus and minuses of both. I do think Sonia had a good point about it has more value to Sutton Valley than it does to other developers. And that may be why the price and why it hasn't sold. But try to get input soon about the uses of the buildings before additional monies are spent. And that's all I have to say. And thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Susan. All right, next up is Linda. All right, Linda, I brought you back over. If you give your name and address one more time.
Linda Bradley, 5 Wisteria Lane. Just 2 quick questions, actually, for everybody. Do we know what the recurring costs of this building, utilities, standard things we have for our other buildings? Has anybody looked into that? What you anticipate the costs are going to be for that building? And are you going to have to do any improvements that will also take out from probably capital or operations this year? That's all I have, the questions.
All right, appreciate it, Linda. And next up we have Rob. Rob, I've brought you over to the meeting. If you could give your name and address, please.
Hi, it's Rob Gibbs, Bar Summit Place. How's everybody doing?
Good, thank you.
The hot one tonight, Rob.
Yeah, a little bit. I've actually really enjoyed listening to the conversation. I appreciated the presentation. I think for me, I would have gotten more out of it if if you guys had gone into what is the plan? Why do we need this property? I think it's what I'm hearing is be a great place, and we can control what happens with it. And Joel laid out, we're not going to need dues increases. But let me ask a question. Without taking time to get the community's input on whether or not to buy it, I'm hearing. I think some of you are not hearing this feedback. It's not so much that are you going to get input from us on what to use it for, but input on what a go, no go to actually purchase it, to to go get into a mortgage. What is the urgency? Are you worried that someone's going to buy it next week? Can you answer that? Okay, I guess not. But for me, I'm like, why is this so urgent? Because we have a lawsuit to our marine contractor. We don't know what that's going to cost. We believe, again, there's some perception. It sounds like maybe there's a lawsuit with El Agave, because when we ask, we're told we can't comment on it.
No lawsuit with El Agave.
Pardon me?
There's no lawsuit with El Agave, so let's not start new rumors.
I'm not trying to start it, AJ. Really, I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be polite here. I'm not. Last time we've talked about it, we can't respond. I guess what I'm saying is I feel like there's a lot of expenses out there that I think our money would be better spent than spending $1.5 million for this building. Although it would be great. I mean, I would enjoy sitting down there, but I just don't think it's the right time to buy it now. The other thing, I just want to make a comment. It's getting hard here where during member comments that some of my neighbors are using this as an opportunity to level, to just kind of come out and smack each other. I think that's wrong. I wish you guys would just cut it off. I'm not going to buy into the, I'm not going to get baited on it. I will just say that my recollection with the reporter is completely different than someone else's. And it's just getting, it's getting on the edge of, is this really how we're going to behave in a recorded, documented community meeting? Is we're going to use it as another version of Facebook? And so, AJ, I would ask that you would just cut that off, if you would, please. Thank you.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got a statement and a question. So the first thing, I think what you're seeing are people defending some of us who are really trying to do the right thing. And there's a lot of stuff going around, and, I can't even look at it anymore. But, I think it's anytime that someone from the defense side, the defending side, says something, then someone else comes in and tries to silence that. And I understand that some people can be direct. There's a lot of people that are, dissenting views of this board who are very direct. So I understand where you're coming from. I prefer kindness, but at the same time, I don't like people sticking a stick at my cage and rattling it, because that really makes people upset. And if you can't see that, then, you got to take the blinders off, because it's happening. The second thing, the way you and I met was, you mentioned that you reached out to the directors running for board, and I never heard from you. So I asked you about it, and we met, and we had a drink or Mountain Dew or whatever it was. And, we've talked quite a few times. So after all that, and that me, I'm curious, are you going to vote to recall me?
I don't know. I've got to think about it.
Okay,
Joshua.
that's all I need to know, Rob. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, Joshua, no, you're cutting me off, and it's not really that
No,
fair
it's
to-
disappointing, man. It's disappointing. I reached across the table to talk to you about this stuff, and you should know me, and I think you do. And I think what what some of your pals are doing right now is really disgraceful for the movement that this board has made, and some of the decisions that we've
Well, Joshua, I've had people say that they are questioning whether or not I was in the hospital. I've had
I can't control it. I had someone cut down a
No,
sign that I spent hours putting up. So I understand.
Joshua, I can't control other people too. What I'm saying is, when Mrs. Cope accuses me of spinning something when a reporter contacted me and uses the meeting comments to do that, I think that's wrong. I do.
But Rob, you use the meeting comments to try to berate us and accuse us of doing something to you. So you're doing the same thing. So you need to look in the mirror and recognize that, like, you know, just like how you lied about me on Facebook about how I was going to close down the marina when I took control of the board. And look, that hasn't happened.
So you know what? Here's the
Like,
thing, AJ. You and
you know, I mean,
No, I
that's
just want to
it.
say
So
this is supposed to be
I
property
think
owner
this conversation
comments.
is done.
Yeah,
And
this
you
is
said you're
not
being-
comments. Not, this isn't
All I'm
comments.
asking is, since this was my response, you two, is that Rob, I think you should give a second thought on your decision. And if you have any issues with me, reach out. But I do support my other directors on this. And I think I support the, you know, their votes. And I think they do have the best interests of this community at heart. And I think if you look past the stinky political cloud that's out there right now, I think you'll see it too. And, you know, we won't agree on everything. Who knows if we'll agree on anything, but I think you should reconsider, especially after the talks that we've had over time. Thank you.
I'll think about that. And Josh, are you willing to sit and talk with me?
I'm always willing to sit with talk with anyone.
Okay, man. And AJ, your recollection of our conversation is very vastly distorted, dude.
Thank you,
Good night.
Rob, for your
Good
time.
night.
Have a good evening.
You too.
So I have another question though for Rob. Rob, do you know who initiated that article in the Bellingham Herald? Because it sure
I do
did seem
not.
like somebody was trying to paint the board
I do not.
as initiating that article. And they even quoted the Sutton Valley connection, my gosh, which is great. I mean, it legitimizes the Sutton Valley connection. There's a lot of truth telling being told there, right? It is, you know, the truth telling Facebook page. But yeah, I mean, it's just really strange that the journalist would quote that.
I know, isn't it strange? I thought the same thing
Strange,
too.
Rob. And it's strange that you got on like before that, you know, and made a big deal about it. That's strange too.
I made a big deal about what?
You made a big deal about the article being published.
No, you weren't listening to me. You must have been reading email. My big deal was, why is Sun Valley providing documents? The reporter told me she received documents with my name in them. And
from Sun Valley, did she tell you that they were from Sun Valley?
You asked me a question, sir. You asked me a question.
Told my wife totally different thing, Rob.
The big deal that I had that you're referring to was, why am I hearing about a lawsuit from that my community has filed from a reporter? That was my biggest deal. The second was,
we can't discuss in open
my
session
biggest, the other big deal that I had was, why is a reporter sharing with me that she received documents from Sutton Valley about me? That, and I told you that was unacceptable to me.
And that never happened. And the reporter said that never happened.
She went on
Not to
record.
me. Not
She's
to
on
me,
record
sir.
saying something different, Rob. So I think we need to end this because you're discussing something that the board really can't go much deeper in. So thank you, though, and you have a good evening.
Thank you, Sonia.
All right. Thank you, Rob. And we've got Ann up next. And if you could give your name and address, please.
Hi, Ann Cope, 52 Louiseview Drive. I don't need to address that other than to say I reached out to and I have her response in writing because I do think a record is important. And that's why I brought it up in property owner comments, because I do think a record is important. That the reporter absolutely said no. And as you know, I wrote to the board and asked you to also share that information with the attorney if you felt appropriate. But as for community input, I just want to point out something really simple. Had you guys gone to the community and said, what do you think about us buying this building? What do you think would have happened? All the people that are saying it's been sitting on the market for 6 years. Do you think that maybe that would have caused some people to suddenly want that building? And then it would have been a lost opportunity for Sun Valley, most likely, because all of a sudden, if people knew Sun Valley was interested in purchasing it, so it made no sense to bring this to the community first. It does make sense to have community input into how it's used. And I think you guys are doing great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. And next up, we have Susan. Susan, if you could give your name and address, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Oh, okay, no problem. Well, thanks for checking in. We've got Trevor. Was this Susan?
Mary.
Mary.
Hi, it's Mary Quinn, 12 Spinnaker Lane, and I just want to thank Timey for opening up members' comments in this board meeting, because I think a lot of things were discussed and they wouldn't have been if she hadn't opened it up. So thanks, Timey. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mary. And I do have a hand raised from.
I'm assuming Susan didn't put it back down.
Okay. There we go. I think that's everybody.
Hands are flying.
Looks like it. Motion to adjourn.
Second.